Hey, we are live on YouTube.
Hi, everybody.
They can't see us because the background's up.
Oh. I just waved to nobody.
We're getting ready. So, 3, 2.
Long as we have faith in our cause
I'm Mike.
and unconquerable willpower,
I'm Dave.
salvation will not be denied us.
And this is Between the Lines.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in a store than it was 4 years ago?
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And we're back.
We're back.
We are here.
You know what, Mike? I'm tired of people telling me that nothing is impossible. I can tell people 100% without any hesitation that I have done nothing for the entirety of my life, and it is possible. It is 100% possible.
Dreams can come true, ladies and
Dreams
gentlemen.
come true. Yeah.
Hey, we released our YouTube video last week, and that went pretty well. So we decided to try to do another one here. We are working with what I would consider substandard equipment. So we have a video we want to play today. I just want to preface from the beginning that there may be some choppiness to the video,
And we may have the occasional guest or two. That,
we've had some Amish popping in and out. For those that are unaware, we record in an undisclosed location that we won't say where.
we won't disclose.
Yeah, we won't disclose. We won't say where that's at. But the cleaning crew came in today, so we're delayed a little bit in releasing this because we got interrupted by the cleaning crew. But c'est la vie. We use this space for free, so we're not going to be too upset about it. We got a new camera, wide angle. Hi, everybody.
I don't have any pants on, so I.
I know that's the downfall is we have to wear pants now.
Yeah. If I suddenly decide to make a stretch here, they might get a full eye view. This might go from Between the Lines to my OnlyFans.
That's right. That's right. As you can see, I have the horribly unhealthy drinks here. If Monster, we're looking for a sponsor. I drink these things religiously. I'll gladly be sponsored by Monster. Dave, on the other hand,
this is brought to you by Water. This is a company based out of Pennsylvania called Water.
Yeah, it's the good old dihydrogen monoxide.
Yeah, didn't they? Weren't they trying to outlaw that?
Yeah. Well, it's the leading cause of drowning.
Yes.
So it's used in industrial applications, and it seeps into our creeks and streams and everything. So,
I had some of it in my basement.
Yeah, a lot of people, believe it or not, they put it in their pools.
Good grief.
Yeah, right in their backyards. They're not.
That's what turned my shorts purple.
Exactly, it's the dihydrogen monoxide. Anyway, last week we talked a little bit. It was pretty much 2A. Some Second Amendment stuff, and
we've been toying with that for quite a bit for the last 2 to 3 episodes, just because there's been a.
So today, what we had planned on doing was we're going to do a little bit of the most popular amendment.
Oh gosh, yeah.
One that is covered in history books, and it's very well. There's a lot of precedent for this amendment. Actually, no, this is like the least used amendment in all of
this is like the Third Amendment is like the Mr. Rogers of the amendments. It's just like, okay.
Yeah. So for those that are unaware, at any rate, by the way, on YouTube, click the subscribe button. It's over here. Click the notification bell. Like the video. Give us the thumbs up. That'll let us know that this is content that you like to see and that you want to see more of this content. That way we can bring you, what you want to see. So like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you can get alerted when our new videos come out. You can find us on Facebook at PA Between the Lines. You can find us on Twitter at the BTL Podcast. And you can find our podcast wherever podcasts are hosted. So a little bit more of the wide angle so you can kind of see our whole setup. This is something that is kind of new to Between the Lines fans. You haven't really been able to see our get up here, but it almost looks as if we know what we're doing. We have our soundboard over in this area here. Just got our cameras here for our close-up cams.
Dave has his
Mike.
absence of pants here.
Yeah, there's Dave. See, as you can see before, we didn't need pants.
No,
but
we
now, unfortunately,
yeah,
nobody wants to see a fat guy without pants on. So
it gets sweaty in here.
it does. I mean, it gets warm. It gets warm.
What was the old Alec Baldwin skit? The sweaty balls.
Sweaty balls. Sweaty balls. Very nice. Yeah. So
what are we talking about?
Yeah, go back to the last episodes and check out those, and
Actually, we tried to get pretty in depth last week. With,
it was we talked
cognitive
about
dissonance and mutual exclusivity.
We were throwing out some pretty hefty terms.
Man,
today's not going to be like that.
I needed a drink of water after last week because I got done talking and I didn't know what I was saying.
So this week we're going to be talking about the Third Amendment. I'll just go ahead and read the text.
That's 1,
yeah.
2, 3.
Uno, dos, tres. So no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Pretty straightforward.
That was a good episode.
Yeah, so let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. Thanks for coming. It really is kind of a dry topic because it really hasn't been used in 140, 150 years.
Yeah.
It was kind of relevant during the Civil War, but still wasn't even used all that much. For context, for those that are unaware of American history, there was the Quartering Act during the Revolutionary War where the King of England decided that soldiers could just take over the houses of the colonials that lived in the colonies here in Pennsylvania. So without any kind of warrant or writ, they could just come and take your house. So when the Constitution was written, they wanted to make sure that would never happen again, that the federal government could never just take over your house and quarter soldiers there without your permission. So it was relevant at one time, but it hasn't really been used since.
Here's a blog that says, the Third Amendment seems to have no direct constitutional relevance at present.
Yeah. Although, I will bring this up real quick.
There was a case
lately. I'm just going to put this up on the big screen here. That basically there was a landlord that I don't know, was it the Biden administration or was that even during the Trump administration?
No, it was during the Trump administration.
It doesn't really matter. There was a moratorium on evictions.
It would have been.
It would have been during the Biden administration.
Yeah, it would have been 2021.
2021, something like that.
Okay.
So it would have been during the. It really doesn't matter who was president, to be honest with you, because in my opinion, it was wrong. But there was a moratorium on. There was a moratorium on evictions, so essentially landlords couldn't evict any tenants during the pandemic, which I kind of see as it was a health thing. They didn't want a bunch of sick homeless people running around, so on and so forth. So that's why the moratorium was. But there was a group of landlords that tried to sue the federal government under the auspices of the Third Amendment, basically saying that since some of their tenants were soldiers, the government was essentially forcing them to house soldiers during peacetime without a law. Well, technically, if you read the Third Amendment, I'm going to bring this back up. If you read the Third Amendment, it does say, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by the law. So essentially, their argument was moot, and the judge actually ruled against them, citing that he voluntarily allowed them to quarter in the house because they had a lease.
Yeah.
So that he voluntarily allowed them to stay in the house. He just wasn't allowed to kick them out. So it wasn't that the government forced him to house the the soldiers. He volunteered to house them. He just couldn't kick them out. So it really wasn't a violation of the Third Amendment.
Well,
but that was the first time in over 100 years that the
was-
Third Amendment was ever
yeah.
brought up in court. So it was just a neat little precedent for our generation.
Was the issue? I don't remember all the. I might have missed it, but were they not paying? Was it the problem?
Well, some of them weren't. Like, as in, all of humanity, there's a swath of folks that are going to do the right thing, and then there's a swath of folks that are going to take advantage of certain situations.
Yeah.
So, some people were paying their rent the whole time because it was the right thing to do. If you had the money and you could afford to pay your rent, you should. There were some people that just didn't pay their rent because they didn't technically have to. They couldn't get kicked out, so they just didn't pay their rent, and that was unfair to landlords because the landlords still had to pay property taxes.
Yeah.
And still had to pay for maintenance on the property and all that stuff.
And it's not to say that there aren't landlords out there that are sleazebags, but
sure.
at the same time, there's a lot of landlords out there that are just normal working people that are trying to make a living, and you've got squatters, basically.
Just normal everyday folks, and unfortunately, the landlords got caught up in a situation that just was sideways, and there really was no good outcome one way or another. I mean, really, you didn't want to be kicking people out on the streets, but at the same time, you also didn't want people taking advantage and not paying their landlords when when rent came due. It's just kind of the right thing to do.
So some of the more interesting context with regards to the Third Amendment was more the fact that what really prefaced the Third Amendment was the British Quartering Acts of 1774, which basically forced.
Yeah.
So this is the thing, 1774. I know we're far removed from 1774. I get that, but the context in which this Third Amendment came about under was the fact that the British, who were at that point the owners, or the monarchy was the intended leadership of said colonies, or the established leadership of said colonies, established that it was mandatory. We love the word mandatory here on Between the Lines because we know that mandatory, when you make anything mandatory, I'm sure it's necessary. I'm sure it's right. But anyways, that being said, is that they basically made it mandatory for the colonists to house British soldiers, to provide for them. It went so far as to make it necessary for homestead owners to build property or to facilitate property that would serve in the capacity of living quarters for the soldiers. But then it went further than that, I think, in that what was some of the...
Well, because what would happen is then now think about it this way. Imagine if you had to house police officers in your home. So think about it that way. What information would they be able to gather on you living in your home?
Yeah, so it's a privacy concern.
Yeah, not everybody is doing illegal stuff, but the problem with laws, especially in this country, is there's a lot of laws on the books that people don't realize that things are illegal. It's a silly example, but there's still laws on the books that say that you can't run your pigs through town in groups of greater than 6. And silly laws like that, where you may not know that it's a law, but if there's a police officer living in your house, they would be able to charge you with something that you were doing wrong that you didn't even know was wrong.
Yeah.
So it became that a lot of these soldiers were then, for lack of a better term, snitching on the citizens, and they would be able to report back to the commanders or whatnot, hey, these people have guns, we need to seize their guns, or these people are part of a group of people that are going to cause trouble, so they need to be monitored and things like that. So you got to think of it that way, that in those times soldiers were law enforcement. So you had the police right in your house all the time, which is a violation of not only the Third Amendment that they put in place, but it would be a violation of the Fourth Amendment as well.
This crisscrosses along.
Yeah, we're going to get into the Fourth Amendment next time.
There's a lot more meat.
Yeah, because I think we'll do like a combination fourth and fifth, because the fourth and fifth are very much intertwined. The third is too, but the fourth and fifth are like right like this. So we'll probably do a combination of those two, and that could be a lengthy podcast. Sorry, guys.
No, the Third Amendment, in reality, again, just, I know that it has very specific language with regards to quartering and supplying. Well, and it wasn't even just so much quartering. I think it got into the point where they had to provide for them.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't, when they say quartering, it doesn't mean, hey, here's a place to lay your head for the night and then go do your thing. No, this is, hey, you need to feed them. You need to make sure that, treat them as, okay, let's look at it in the terms of your taxes. Every year you would be able to claim these people as dependents, essentially, is what it boils down to.
Yeah. So.
There was a piece of case law back in 1952. There was a piece of case law back in 1952. Sorry, I'm flipping everybody off while I'm in the piece of case law. 1952, Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company versus Sawyer. And what was going on is, in order to sabotage a national steel strike during the Korean War, President Truman issued an executive order to seize and operate the country's steel mills. So basically,
it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Dodgeball. I could go so many ways with that, but the court ruled the president didn't have the authority to seize private property without an act of Congress. In the majority opinion, Justice Robert H. Jackson used the Third Amendment, which prohibited forcible quartering during wartime without congressional approval, to illustrate the court's decision. Even in wartime, his seizure of needed military housing must be authorized by Congress.
Exactly.
So, understandably, my grasp of how they looked at it is basically they looked at the seizure of property in the context of using it for the housing of military. Mm-hmm. So that's how it was being portrayed, is that basically... So the reason why that plays into the conversation today, I think, is because it comes back to a very important piece that we talked a little bit last week, which is private property. We were talking a little bit about how Ayn Rand, believes, or in her philosophy, believed very strongly about the idea that from private property, or the ability to own private property, a lot of our rights extend from that, whether they be intellectual properties, physical property, land, whatever the case may be.
And that's the important distinction, not to step on you, but the important distinction is that property isn't just land.
No.
Like your car is your private property. If you painted a painting, that's your intellectual property.
Yeah.
So private property is very important in a free society, because without being able to claim something as your own, then anybody can just come and take it anytime they want. And without any type of protection from people seizing your private property, like copyright laws and things like that, then really you're working for nothing. And anything that you design or come up with, or music you write, all of that is protected under private property, and without those protections, it can just be seized at any time.
Well, if you think about it too, it's like if we go, what's interesting is, as you start to read the Bill of Rights, as you start to read the amendments as a whole, as a collective, you start to see a picture that forms.
Yep.
You really do. You start to see that even though a lot of these amendments to most people would be unknown in how they apply on day-to-day basis, when you start to read them as a holistic collective, you start to see is that they speak back to the original underlying things that we get very fired up about, which is freedom of speech, freedom of speech.
You can say speech.
Yeah.
You have every right. You have every right to say speech.
Even though it has no, we don't know what speech is. That might be the sound that a great horned owl makes in mating season. I don't know. Speech. I'm just.
You have every right.
Maybe that's what a pastor does, during his morning message. he preaches. He preaches to this congregation, and it's spreadtastic because he's preaching the spurred. Okay, I'm done. But anyways, but you get what I'm saying.
No,
is that
absolutely.
all of this. So the Third Amendment, it seems boring, benign, and very irrelevant in the context of what goes on in today's day and age. But
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
But back to what you said is that property is more than just simply, I have my 2 feet planted in my house, or I have my feet planted on a piece of property. Intellectual properties. Could we not go to the extent of saying that the government is quartering or forcing me to quarter somebody's ideology within the context of my, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why when they say in modern times, they say things like people will own nothing and they'll be happy. People generally think that means people will own no property. But that means more than that. That means you don't own your clothes.
Yeah.
You don't own your farm.
Yeah.
You don't own your tractor. You don't own your car. You don't own your thoughts.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? If you own no private property, your thoughts are your private property. Your speech is your private property. You have every right to that. And when they say that nobody will own anything and they'll be happy, that scares the ever-loving shit out of me. Because who's going to own everything then? Somebody has to own it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, think of it in monarchy terms. Monarchy. Serfdom. So basically, a king's power or queen's power was derived from his serfdom. Was derived from.
In a monarchy, it comes from God.
Yeah, well,
they ordained them as.
That's what they say. They say that's how power transitions. The idea of how power transitions in a monarchy is
Sorry for the can.
Because it's it's birthright. Basically, they're saying that these lineages, these bloodlines, are entitled to this. But in the grand scheme of things, a king or queen would have no power if they didn't have a kingdom that they served over. Because you could very easily call yourself a king of Broad Street or king of wherever you live.
But if nobody recognizes that.
Exactly. If nobody recognizes who the king of the castle is, so to speak, or queen of the castle is, in terms of intellectual properties, you can picture a mountain as, let's say, I don't know, name a musician.
John Lennon.
John Lennon had a mountain of work, intellectual work that he put his time and efforts into that we still appreciate to this day and age. Let's say John never bought a piece of property in his entire life, like physical land, house, whatever the case be, car, I don't know, whatever you want to throw in there. But yet he had all this body, this mountain of work, intellectual property that he produced. It is from that he can say that he's the king of his county. His
castle. Yeah.
His castle is that body of work. So to your point, it's that reestablishing. Although although taking the Third Amendment and deriving this kind of argument out of it might be a stretch for somebody, in the grand scheme of things, it just all speaks back to the core principles of property, right to your speech, right to own, right to be able to say what you think because you have property and you're a property owner, therefore you should.
Because think about it this way. If you own a home, which is property, we're going to go back to the traditional definition of property. If you own a home and the government can just take it anytime they want to, do you really own it?
Yeah.
Is it really yours?
Exactly.
Or does it belong to the government to begin with? And we're going to be putting an addition on our garage, and we end up. This will make sense. I'm not just going off into left field here, but we're putting an addition on our garage, and we have to get all kinds of permits.
Yeah.
In order to add on to our own property.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere.
It's ridiculous.
If you knew where I live in the middle of the woods. Maybe some squirrels will be pissed off that our garage is bigger, but I don't understand why we have to get permission from the government to add on to our own house. Do I actually own it? Do I actually own my property if I have to get a permit to?
Well, that's really the argument with taxes is that, am I still paying taxes because I own the property or because the government is leasing it to me? You know,
Exactly.
if you think
No.
of that in that context.
That's a great way to think of it because, taxes were never really supposed to be a thing.
Yeah. Not in the scope of what they are today.
We'll get to it. That's the 16th Amendment.
Yeah.
We'll
That's
get
a
to
long
it.
way
That's
off.
a long way off. We got
Long,
we got 13
long man.
13 to go before that. But at any rate, we've come so far from the intentions of the founding fathers that it's almost scary.
Well, we've given our rights away in inches is really what it comes down to.
It's been progressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Progressive taxes, progressive
Exactly.
laws, progressive politicians.
That's the art of progressivism, is that way back when they knew that they couldn't just take rights away, people wouldn't stand for that. But if you erode them generally, people don't notice that they're losing them.
Yeah, it may have taken, the people that were closer to the founding of this country were very free. The rest of us 200 to 300 years later are starting to feel the hurt from what progressivism does, or at least today's definition of progressiveness.
So I found
whatever that word is.
I found a video. I think that we'll pull that up. That I think speaks to, kind of the Third Amendment and how it's looked at as kind of absurd in today's world. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. I will apologize because it upsets me, but I do have a sense of humor, so I can understand he's joking. He says that the founding fathers are dumb at the beginning. So any of you sensitive conservatives out there that can't handle critique of the founding fathers, here's your trigger warning. We here at Between the Lines do have a sense of humor.
I'm pretty sure Alexander Hamilton probably called
I'm sure of it.
Burr dumb at one point. I mean, he shot him, so I'm sure they had some words.
They certainly didn't agree anyway. So at any rate, this is an SNL monologue.
This is an SOL monologue.
An SNL monologue from John Mulaney. And so I'm going to give him all the credit for this, but he has a unique take on the Third Amendment that I think is pretty cool.
Hilarious.
And it's funny. So again, I apologize if this video is choppy. The audio should be fine, but I apologize if the video is choppy. We're working with some substandard equipment here. So if you really want to get some unchoppy videos, start donating to the channel, and we can afford better equipment. It's expensive.
My OnlyFans just isn't cutting it. I can't get the traction, but
All right, so here is John Mulaney.
It is hard to make friends when you're an adult male. I think that's the greatest miracle of Jesus.
Okay, I started
truly,
that at the
is
wrong
that
place.
He was a 33-year-old man, and he had 12 best friends.
I'm laughing because I'm trying to fill in. There we go.
We're dumb because they made the Constitution and they numbered it, and the order is weird. They sat down, they had a feather, they knew how to make a pen, they were just being jerks. Amendment.
What the heck?
It is a leap year, as I said.
Sorry, we got poltergeist in the machines today, apparently.
Yeah, we're going to pause this and we're going to try it again. So I apologize for that. Oh, man, this YouTube stuff is hard.
Yeah.
The founding fathers were dumb because they made the Constitution and they numbered it, and the order is weird. They sat down, they had a feather, they knew how to make a pen, they were just being jerks. Amendment number 1, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of religion. Okay, that's 1. How about 2? You can have all the guns you want. 2? Like 17, 19? No. 2. Guns. Let's just put guns. He seems upset, all right? Amendment number 3. The army can't live in
your house.
Okay, buddy, I think you're going through your own thing in life right now, and I feel for you. I think a soldier might be sleeping with your wife, and you want to grab a gun and kill him, and I feel for you, but that cannot affect the list. This is like a forever list, and we haven't even gotten to basics, like morning time is when you eat breakfast, so put it down in writing. The army can't live in your house.
In your house.
And don't you thank God every day for that Third Amendment? The other half afternoon, this was Tuesday, I was in my apartment and the buzzer rang, and it was the 101st Airborne. And they said, permission to live in your house? And I went, Third Amendment. And he said, gentlemen, he's invoked the third. Let's fall out and find another house to live in. A thing that we do.
So he's just kind of pointing out the absurdity of the Third Amendment today, because if you really want to be technical about it, in all honesty, the Third Amendment was probably the most successful amendment.
Yeah.
It's been the least debated amendment.
Yeah.
It's been the least contentious amendment. And I don't really think anybody's had problems with quartering soldiers in 240 years.
No.
So, yay to the
Successful
Third
amendment.
Successful amendment. So,
Did you almost say sexy amendment?
I think it's sexy.
It's a sexy amendment.
Not as sexy as the second.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's
guns. All the guns.
All the guns you want.
Not 17 or 19. 2.
No.
Number 2.
Guns.
All of them.
All the guns. At least he understands the concept of the Second Amendment.
And number 3, you can't live in my house.
The army can't live in your house. I love it. I love it.
I love his, when he does the whole Marge bit. Marge. It's like, who uses the word bozo? He was talking about the New York
Bozo.
Post. Who uses the word bozo? Some 90-year-old chain-smoking woman in Queens named Marge. Hey, Marge, what's the scoop? He's a bozo.
He's a bozo. And the way he says it. He's a bozo.
But
So,
nobody uses that word
nobody
anymore.
uses bozo
But that's the
anymore.
point. It's like, they're using language, they're using terms, they're using case law, in terms of the Third Amendment that really, for us today, doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
But again, kind of going back to what we started to discuss with the historical relevance of it in terms of the quartering acts, they were literally, wasn't there some historical narrative with regards to how the British soldiers were treating the people that they were living with?
Absolutely. That too. I mean, that was part of it is, again, you think about it as if the police were living in your house. They would feel like they had authority over you, even though they were in your home, because they didn't recognize the authority of your private property.
And we're not talking about family members that are in the military.
Yeah, no.
That's not what this is referring to. This is talking about
strangers from 2,000 miles away.
Exactly.
Taking over your property.
Exactly.
And they would, in some cases, completely take your property and kick you off your land.
Exactly. And that was the bigger thing, is that it became an infringement. It wasn't just like, if you look at it in the context of the Revolutionary War and even the Civil War, I mean, if you think about it in that context, everything was domestic at that point. The fights were domestic for the most part.
Yeah.
But, they didn't have army bases, not in the context that we have today. They didn't have Fort Hood and, what's the big one in Georgia? Fort Benning.
Oh, boy, I don't know.
Fort Benning is the big one in Georgia where a lot of military go to train. But anyways, we didn't have bases like that could house hundreds of thousands of personnel. We have that capacity nowadays to house them. But we're talking about a war that's happening, an active war that's happening in people's backyards.
Yeah, exactly.
Backyards.
That's the thing.
Like literally backyards.
Literally in your backyard.
The stories from a lot of the founders was that, they could walk out the back of their house and they see cannon fire or the blast from cannon fire and guns going off, not just a couple miles away, Yorktown and all the big fights that happened during the Revolutionary War. So you've got these fights happening. You have British strolling through who they presume to own. They presume to be the power, at that time.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, this is ours anyways. It doesn't
Yep.
matter that you're fighting for your freedom. I can
Yep.
come in and prop my feet up on your coffee table.
Because they didn't recognize our
Exactly.
freedom.
They didn't, and that was the big underlying piece of this, is that the British did not recognize the private individual dignity and rights of the people that lived there. They saw them as not colonists, as second-class citizens.
Yeah.
They literally saw them as
They were
second-class citizens.
even less than British citizens. They were colonists, and that means that they didn't have any kind of right to their property because nobody owned anything. It was all under British rule.
So
they just didn't accept it.
So let's put this in today's context in terms of, I know how many minutes do we have? 10 minutes?
10 minutes left. Something like that.
So Joe Biden just recently fell off a bike. Oh, sorry, that wasn't what I wanted to talk about. Joe Biden recently announced that he was going to use Emergency Powers Act to force the gasoline companies to pump more gas, which is the most asinine thing I've ever heard. It seems like whenever a body in power can't figure out a real solution to a problem, they immediately become a bully with regards to how to fix the issue. Well, you can't fix it. I can't figure it out, so I'm going to force you to do things that aren't going to happen anyways. It's like taking a dead mule and whipping him because he's not pulling the cart. It's like, what are you going to do? Just keep yelling at him? I'm going to institute Emergency Powers Act against this dead mule that's not doing anything. It's stupidity on one level. It's ignorance on another. It's just complete narcissism on other levels that just is pervading this whole ethos of we can force our way, we can force problems to be fixed. Well, you could have fixed it if you'd gotten on top of it about 2, 3, 4 years ago instead of sitting on your fucking ass and pretending like sorry, YouTube, but
You get a couple.
you get a couple. But you get what I'm saying is that, if you look at it in the context of what happened in 1952 with Harry Truman, and Harry Truman was a Republican president, was he not?
Truman?
Wasn't Truman a Republican president?
He might have been.
But anyways,
Yeah.
point of it being the idea that any president, doesn't matter who it is, whether it had been Trump, whether it had been Harry Truman, whether Dwight D. Eisenhower or Roosevelt or now Biden, it doesn't matter. The 1950s.
His name is John C.
Sorry, I got into that. But the point is that Truman, who a lot of people would look back and say he was a relatively moderate to conservative type of president. I guess
is the only president to use nuclear weapons, though.
Yeah, that's true.
So, there is that.
But that's true. Yeah, that's something to put in perspective. We've had a lot more, I guess, tolerable presidents since him.
Yep.
In that regard.
Truman wasn't bad.
And then you had Woodrow Wilson, who in the 20s, who wanted to make it illegal to not fight in the war, basically.
Woodrow Wilson, I'm just going to state this for the record. Woodrow Wilson was the worst president in history.
Yeah.
Even worse than Biden.
Quite literally.
And that's saying
Just
something.
because the economy was better than it is now doesn't mean anything.
And he started the whole progressive movement.
Yeah.
He started all of this bullshit that we're going through now. It was all him, and they knew that's when all this stuff started. They knew that if they couldn't just erode things all at once, they had to do it little by little. So he started the progressive movement.
Thanks, Woodrow. I hope you turn in your grave.
I hate that guy.
But anyways, just looking in the context of this Supreme Court judgment that they stated the president does not have the right to take over the steel mills because they consider it an act of quartering.
Yeah.
Because quartering, would you say that when you use the word quartering, I know that's not a term that we use very often in today's day and age, but if you hear the word quartering, immediately I think government.
Yeah.
I don't think of, a landlord or some other private property owner that's trying to buy something.
Because it usually only applies to quartering troops.
Yes.
You don't quarter citizens.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You quarter troops.
So
it's a military term.
So if President Biden is, throwing these terms around loosely, willy-nilly, so to speak, that he's going to use emergency act power or emergencies, what is it called?
The Emergency Powers Act.
Emergency Powers Act.
True international effort to pressure.
Shut the hell up. but anyways, the point I'm trying to make is if Truman was told that he couldn't secure the steel mills because they were in the middle of the war and there was a strike that was potentially holding up the production of armaments or whatever the case be. If a president can't do that, then a president can't turn around and threaten the gas industry that we're going to take over, so to speak, because that's what else are they going to do? Like,
Yeah.
what else? What other?
It would essentially be the government taking over means of production of the,
Exactly.
It's socialism is what that is. They're just the government is taking over, and I do want to make a point that those oil companies, that's private property.
Yes,
Just
exactly.
because they're corporations doesn't mean it's not private property.
Exactly.
So that it would be the government taking over private property, which is very much frowned upon, at least it used to be, in the United States. But it seems like more and more these new generations, which I understand I'm a part of, but these newer generations don't understand why those protections are in place.
Yeah.
There's a very thick red line
Yeah.
drawn between government and private property.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that. And if we stray away from that, then we all, what else are they going to do? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I hate to use the slippery slope, but where does it end? You can't.
Well,
Can't have your cake and eat it too, supposedly.
Well, and to your point again, when you were talking about the erosion of rights, and when I said about how that our rights have been taken away in inches over the how many years, if you put it in this context, I get that the Third Amendment doesn't have any immediate relevance in our mind to what's going on right now, but don't they also try to do that with the Second Amendment?
Absolutely.
And also in the First Amendment, they try to make it irrelevant. They try to make certain clauses or language within those amendments seem irrelevant.
Yep.
Within the context of what's happening right now. Well, you're not being threatened now. Well, the point was it's not so much a protection in peace, it's a protection in wartime.
Exactly.
So that's the whole idea, is that the Third Amendment, yeah, I get it. It's got no relevance right now because we don't have a civil war going on in the U.S.
Yep.
or we don't have foreign invaders coming into the U.S. I get that. But if it happens, if that should not be the case anymore and we do have a foreign invader or we have a domestic invader, are we going to suddenly have a government forcing soldiers to live with us? There is a relevance, and the relevance is that it's a protection against what might happen.
Yeah.
It's and that's what drives me nuts, is that laws are not written necessarily in light of what is happening. They're written in light of what could happen.
Yep.
And I think that's, why do people have freaking savings accounts? Why do people have 401ks? Why do people have IRAs? Why do people invest in stocks?
Because, Dave, they hate poor people.
Exactly. That's my point.
Because they hate poor people.
It's to guard yourself against what might happen. They tell you to put money away for the rainy day. Yeah, it's beautiful and sunny out today, but tomorrow may not be the case.
And I made this point in a private conversation we had earlier, but we've lost the Great Depression generation.
Yeah. Yes.
There's very few of that generation left, and they understood more than any other generation how quickly the rug and everything could be pulled out from underneath
Exactly.
you, and you're left with nothing.
Literally.
Destitute, literally nothing. Like eating food scraps because you have nothing else to eat. That kind of issue. We're spoiled.
Yeah.
In these last 4 generations, all the way up to, that would be 4, right?
Yeah, about that.
4 generations now of peacetime and good prosperity, and it's like the old saying, hard times make strong men make good times make weak men make hard times.
Exactly.
And the whole, and I say men, I'm not discriminatory. By men, I mean mankind. Women are involved too. Don't cancel me. But the point is that generation knew that you had to eat ramen noodles and save your money
Yeah.
in an encyclopedia, or bury it in the backyard, or
Yeah.
store it in your mattress because the government couldn't protect you.
Yeah.
And the government's not always going to be there to help you, and that's what individualism is. And I'm sorry to say it, one more point before I cede my soapbox here. Guns are private property.
Yeah.
So if you're going to try and ban guns, you may be able to ban new sales, but you can't take those guns back. That's private property. The Supreme Court's never going to go for that, at least not at the current level, which is, in my opinion, why they're not protecting the Supreme Court, because they want those justices to die. Anyway.
Well, interesting enough, the jury ruled pretty heavily against that dude that turned himself in, that was outside of Kavanaugh's house.
Oh, yeah.
So I think they
charged him with attempted murder.
Yeah.
Even though he did. And for context, there was a gentleman, I don't think this happened between last episode and this episode. So there was a gentleman with a handgun, or maybe we talked about it last episode, I can't remember, but there was a gentleman outside of Kavanaugh's house, Justice Kavanaugh's house, and he had a gun, he had zip ties. I think we did go over this. They arrested him, he turned himself in. It turns out that it was all because of his sister. He called his sister right before he was about to go in, and she convinced him to turn himself in instead of going through with it. So she's a hero.
Yeah.
She needs to get some sort of recognition because she saved a man's life and possibly the lives of his children. Because, yes, Kavanaugh had protections and whatnot, but he could have easily snuck in. And
there's too many variables there to say for sure what would have happened.
But I'm very thankful that she convinced him to turn himself in, and everything kind of went the way it did. But we're living in such uncertain times that more and more these rights that we have become more and more important. And if we don't, rights are like muscles. If you don't use them, you lose them. And you have to flex your rights in order to keep them. So,
well, it comes back down to understand, the whole reason why we were even taking time to go out over these amendments is to give, hopefully, the listeners and people that are subscribing to this a better understanding, in at least to some degree, hopefully, of what the overall message is of the Constitution, why it's there. Because now you have, if you are a person in Canada right now, you're being told by your elected dictator, Justin Dickwad Trudeau, that you don't have any
Canadians. We hate the Canadian government.
Exactly. I wish the Canadians would revolt against that asshole.
It would be so great.
I wish they would overturn that government.
But you're talking about one of the only countries in the world that gained their independence by asking nicely.
Yeah. It's true.
You know what I mean? So, good on them. I love Canada. I love Canadians. I've spent so many summers in Canada that it's not even funny. I have family that's from Canada. I have family that still lives in Canada, and I love them to death. They're good people, but they're too nice. You guys are too nice. You need to speak up for yourselves and defend your rights, because Trudeau just said that Canadians don't have a right to defend themselves with firearms.
Well, if you're talking from a legal precedent, their constitution is a piece of it's
not quite as robust in its protections the way that ours is.
So and that's the whole point. That goes back right to what we're saying, is that a prime minister like Trudeau, who has intentions and agendas, is going to use the law to his advantage.
Yep.
So when you have a piece of documentation that is established as the law of the land, what is it called? They're a testament, or
a testament to
rights, or something along those lines.
It's I can't remember what they call it. It's not a constitution, but it's like a constitution, and they call it. I'm gonna have to look it up. Let me look it up while you're.
But the point is that if you have somebody in control, and this is the whole point why the Constitution is so explicit yet vague and broad in many ways, that it says, you may look at the very many facets of the Constitution and wonder what its purpose is, and what it serves in the context of the Constitution and your rights. But when you start looking at the activities of people like Justin Trudeau and others, you start to see that if you aren't explicit in establishing what are your rights and what is the right of a person, in the context of a country, then you will have somebody like Justin Trudeau just come in and establish whatever he feels is best.
It's called the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Okay.
It's in their constitution. They do have a constitution, but the specific their Bill
It's like
of
their
Rights.
Bill of Rights, yeah.
Their Bill of Rights is called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
But I mean, the point is if you don't say it, and if you don't put your foot down, and if you don't draw a line in the sand, and for us, the line in the sand is the Constitution. Understand that.
Well, think about it this way: if you want to go into business with somebody, which is essentially what you're doing with the government, you're going into business with the government. You're making an agreement with the government. I'm going to let you run things, because power is derived by the consent of the people.
Yes.
That goes all the way back to the Magna Carta. Which is a document we probably should cover at some point too, because that's important to English common law, which is where a lot of our laws come from. But anyway, I digress. The consent of the right of the government. So you're saying to the government with these Bill of Rights, all right, we'll let you run things, but you're not allowed to do this, 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 and this, and this. A little bit different for the Canadian Charter of Freedoms, because that kind of it lays out what the government protects rather than what it's not allowed to do, which again, that's why good old US of A, our Constitution, in my opinion, is the best, because it limits the government.
Yeah.
It doesn't give their Constitution more or less gives the government more powers, because that Charter of Freedoms comes from the government. Our Bill of Rights is inalienable. It comes from nature. It comes from God. It comes from whatever creation, whatever you believe created human beings. It's not a religious thing. It's just it's innate.
Yeah.
It's built in. It's WYSIWYG. It's what you see is what you get. It's inanimate in humanity. It's built into being human. Those rights are. Which one of those rights is to defend yourself? If somebody comes at you with a stick, you're allowed to pick up a rock. And that goes back to the basic days of humanity, all the way back to Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
and again, just to reiterate it, the government is not leasing you your rights.
yeah, they don't come from the government.
Joe Biden or Donald Trump do not give me the right to do anything that I do. They do not. The government can tell me what I can't do in the context of my rights, which means I can't harm somebody else.
Only because, as a collective, we have agreed upon that through Congress.
Exactly.
That's the only reason why we have any limits on our rights whatsoever, is because we've agreed. We've ceded those rights.
Yeah.
We've allowed the government to take those rights through representatives.
But there again, it's like we understand as logical people that when it comes to new laws that are on the books, that there's going to be a lot of undiscovered territory or undiscovered new country, so to speak, with regards to how those laws apply. I mean, look at the Atlantic Journals. The Atlantic Journals are the body of law that pertains to just one area, just case law.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, it's like you've got volumes upon volumes of case law that are, and that's not even the whole body of law. That's just the ones that they kept because they established the precedent that we judge based off
our
of.
System of our judicial system actually goes back further than the creation of our country, because the Supreme Court uses English common law as a precedent to our current situation, because we decided after the Magna Carta, which was kind of a bullshit document, but it's important because it was toothless, but it established that the only reason that kings can be kings is because citizens allow them to be kings.
Exactly.
And the French Revolution proves that.
Yes.
Because as soon as the people are fed up enough, they're going to guillotine your ass.
Exactly.
Sorry, YouTube.
But I mean, to your point, again, it's like kings are not kings unless the serfdom or the serfs.
Because there's more serfs than there are kings.
Exactly.
There was an argument during the Revolution. We got 5 minutes, but I want to make this point real quick. And it was in the movie The Patriot. but it was an actual argument used during the Constitutional Convention in when they were deciding. It was the what do they call it? The Continental Congress. That's what it was. When they were deciding whether or not they wanted to go to war, one of the delegates in the movie, it was Mel Gibson's character, stands up and he says, "Tell me why I should trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away."
Exactly.
And that's exactly where I feel that we've come in this country is now we've elected tyrants.
Yeah.
We've allowed Congress to become tyrants. Not all of them, but it seems like that Congress is no longer indicative of the will of the people. It's almost as if Congress tells people what their will should be.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it's supposed to work.
No.
It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Well, the president to the senators, to the House of Representatives, to the Supreme Court, I guess minus the Supreme Court, are to act as representatives of the people.
Yep.
The Supreme Court acts as the representative of the Constitution solely.
Yep.
So there's the difference. There's the spin on that, is that the Supreme Court, nine
for now.
The 9 for now, until they try to pack the courts or whatever they decide to do. The 9 for now are just representatives of the Constitution. They strictly are supposed to be confined to representing that. And then the president is your representative. I mean, he's got a bigger base that he has to represent.
Yep.
He has to represent both sides of the...
But the president is supposed to be... The president is not supposed to be a legislator.
No.
The president is supposed to be the enforcer.
Exactly.
He's the head of the executive branch that enforces the laws.
Enforces Congress.
Congress is supposed to be made up of people, made up of citizens that make the laws.
Exactly.
Then the executive branch enforces the laws, and the judicial branch decides whether the laws are constitutional.
That's
basic 8th grade civics.
That's why the emergency powers need to either be gone or drastically removed.
Because the president was never supposed to have as much power as he has.
No president should have any standing power by which he can suddenly
unilaterally
seize control of a steel mill.
Yep.
Or seize control of an oil industry.
Yep.
Or threaten gun manufacturers that he's gonna. What was the most recent one he did?
There's a few things that he said he was going to do. If gun control doesn't pass, then he's going to do it by executive order, which is kind of stupid because he said in the past that he can't do that. He's actually quoted it. He's been quoted as saying, "I would love to do it by executive order, but I can't."
Exactly.
But then he turns around and says, "I'm going to do it by executive order." Because he thinks he can use the Emergency Powers Act. Essentially what he wants to do is he wants to declare a national emergency because of gun violence, and then he'll be able to do whatever he wants with those emergency powers. Well, he also said that if Roe versus Wade is overturned, he's going to use the emergency powers to declare a national health emergency and set up abortion clinics at military bases. That's ridiculous.
He's out of his mind.
He's so drunk with power.
Yeah.
And they want to give him more. I don't understand.
Well, even the Supreme Court said, and this is verbatim, an emergency may not call into life a power which has never lived, but emergency may afford a reason for the exertion of a living power already enjoyed. So that's the thing, is that Joe Biden, Donald Trump, whoever's the president of the United States at that point, has no power by which to call into life powers that never existed to begin with.
Yes.
Does he have the powers under any other precedent to do anything that he has said he wants to do? No.
No, and in fact,
bottom line, no.
In fact, the precedent that you brought up earlier about FDR trying to take over the steel factories,
exactly,
kind of gives credence to the fact that he can't do what he says he wants to do.
He can't. But the Congress...
Who's to say he's not going to try it anyway?
Senate and House of Representatives need to hold his feet to the fire on that.
Absolutely.
If they're going to hold the 45th president to the fire for things, then they need to hold the 46th president to the fire for these things, and they need to hold it tightly, because it just goes to show it doesn't matter what your color is with regards to politics, is that if you aren't in control and you don't understand that what your purpose is there as president of the United States, then you will think yourself as dictator-elect,
Yep.
basically, who Justin Trudeau thinks he is, apparently.
Yeah, he thinks he's the king of Canada, and it doesn't work that way.
I swear to God, if we lived in Canada, we're citizens of Canada, we would be enemies number one.
Man.
Because I wouldn't shut up about
Nope.
that piece of shit.
Nope, we would definitely be. We should anyway. In all honesty, we should be calling to the, sounding the warning bells, because I do love Canada, and it's a shame.
I hope they wake up. I hope
It's
they.
a shame that they're going through what they're going through. But I feel like the populace up there is just too, for lack of a better term, they're just too peaceful. I mean, it's great that they are, but I just don't think they have it in them to fight back.
And it's crazy to think, because they have like a fraction of the issues that we have in this country.
Yeah.
One, because of population, and two, just because of how they are.
Yep.
But that being said, they have a fraction of the problems that we're trying to address, and people are, that we're going back and forth on, but yet they're allowing their powers, their rights to be stripped from them.
Yep.
In light of the fact that, or despite the fact that they aren't experiencing near the issues that we're experiencing in this country, which just goes to show you that dictators don't need a reason.
No.
They'll do whatever they want whenever they feel it's best.
Nope, they'll make a reason.
They don't have to have sound justification for anything that they do. They'll just do it.
Exactly.
And that's why emergency powers, and that's why back to the Third Amendment, yeah, we know it's not superbly relevant in the immediate context of what's going on, but when you look at it for what it is, when you look at it in the scope of everything that we've been talking about with the amendments, this is as much a part of the rights to property and the right to privacy and the right to personal freedom and dignity and all the other good stuff that you can throw in under that categorization. That has the Third Amendment has as much, if not more, to do with that than all the other amendments. It's all part and parcel. It's all the sum total. So,
Yep.
but.
You can find us on Facebook.com/PA Between the Lines. You can find us on Twitter at the BTL Podcast. And you can find us at our website, thebtlpodcast.com.
You can't find me on my OnlyFans.
So I guess in conclusion, all the amendments are relevant, even the ones that we don't use every day, because there may come a time in the future where they try to quarter soldiers as a way to deter certain things.
Sounds crazy, but crazier things have happened.
Yeah, exactly. If it hadn't happened before, it wouldn't be an amendment.
Yeah.
So you can say what you want about the founding fathers, but they saw pretty far into the future, in my opinion, and they knew exactly what was going to happen. So. Find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, get a hold of us on YouTube. Leave some comments on the video. Let us know what you think, what you enjoy about the podcast, what we can do better. Comments are always good. We enjoy that. So comment down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It'll be over here. The notification bell over this way, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up.
Leave comments like, I think Mike and Dave are sexy SOBs.
I mean, whatever you're into. I don't think anybody's ever said that about me, but whatever you're into. So until next time, I just ask that you take care of yourselves and each other. Just have a good week.
Have a great week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.